So if I think we will have ladies go first. Virginie, if you will take the stage, please.
Thank you very much. I wanted to thank once again everybody for this great conference. I think it's really nice to see how much Greenwood has evolved. I always tell my students when they graduate that we need to keep on supporting the university, because the value of their degree is only worth the value of the university, and I think when it comes to publications it's the same. So it's very good that we can always support the journal, and quality is increasing, and that's great. So I was going back and forth with the title. I had to call this Myth and Reality. I decided to go with Fad and Fab. And what I'm trying to do in this paper is to look at how North Korea is dealing with things externally, with potential new partners. I'll talk about this a little bit later. Right. So if we go back to researching contemporary North Korea, I always have a few slides that kind of summarize, I think, the type of discussion that we had yesterday. So obviously, when we have a look at North Korea, we have to look at, obviously the differences, the division perhaps. Some of us are still going back to history and trying to find, some common elements that might remain. A number of studies also obviously look at the division. Development is very important. We usually have quite a lot of studies regarding South Korea's developments, and then the North Korea one, which is not as developed. We can talk about competition in the 70s, for example. In the 90s, it was this. Do they have something, or do they not have it? This idea that North Korea is about to collapse, that the weapons are not real. But I think we've moved away from this. I think it's a good thing, because this paradigm of North Korea collapsing, I think has blocked us for a while too long perhaps, in trying to think of other ways that North Korea is actually dealing with its own affairs. Now we're obviously dealing with the new generation, transition, consolidation perhaps. And we're also dealing with weapons that, for all purposes, are somewhat real. So I think there's also a shift in the literature now to kind of basically acknowledge that North Korea probably has nuclear weapons, and not be able, obviously, to send them away or far away. But for all purposes, we are dealing with the nuclear power here. A lot of the research, obviously, deals with the antagonism that North Korea has against the United States. And I think this is perhaps, there are other things. This is a very brief literature review in a way, without naming names, but I think you all know what falls where. When we look at globalization, when we look at trade, we often end up with those types of pictures of a word, and then there's here, and there's South Korea with the light, so it's globalized, and everything is great, and then there's North Korea, and in North Korea there's nothing. There are a number of books that have been published actually using those types of images and actually talking about the fallacies behind this. So if we have, Pyongyang just, a little bit of light, it means that not much is happening. I think that's a bit misleading. So what I've been trying to do in this paper is actually to look at this puzzle, which is this idea that actually, North Korea might end up collapsing. So why not, in a way? If it's not collapsing, we kind of have to have a look at ways and try to understand what has been going on. So what I suggest is that actually there hasn't been really much literature looking at North Korea's relation and position with specific blocks. We mentioned sometimes, the Manhan movement, but not much has been really looked at in that direction. Obviously, the framing of North Korea as a rogue state hasn't helped because you have a rogue state. It's irrational. It's a state that we cannot engage, so we can push it away and we don't really look at ways to engage. But the thing is that if collapse is not coming, something else is at play. So what I suggest is that it might be. There's a little bit of lag, perhaps, but it might be that actually North Korea has somehow managed to develop relationships that we haven't really looked at, because we didn't have to, since North Korea was collapsing. So now we are looking at a number of new things, or processes that actually have existed for a long, long time, but haven't really been in research. So this is essentially what I'm trying to do here. So, when having a look at North Korea's really, I have a couple of parts to kind of explain all of this. The work that I do tend to really follow what's going on in the KCNA. In a way, it's very useful because North Korea is very useful, very, very good at communicating what it wants when it wants. So the KCNA, even though it's propaganda, fits the purpose quite well, because if we want to try to see how North Korea portrays or talks about those relationships, we will find stuff in the KCNA. Some of you might have panicked during the summer when they geo-blocked the KCNA if you were accessing it from outside. It can be resolved with a VPN if you haven't done so. Then you can just download the entire archive and then you're all safe. Another way to do research is using what we have at the Wilson Center. Really quite a lot of documents that are quite useful when spending a lot of time coding. So this is in a way what I've done with all of this. So what we end up with orthodox relationships. Those are not very interesting. We know about those. We have antagonism. This is very, very broadly, speaking. The U.S., South Korea, Japan, perhaps. Lots of things fall in those lines. And then we have the closeness. I don't say ally because I think ally just implies a bit too much. China, Russia, perhaps Cuba for geopolitical reasons. When we go beyond this, we end up with what I call two categories. One is the rhetorical, and the other one is actuated. So this is actually based on the coding of from 1997 all the way through 2014 of the KCNA, the relationship, and how North Korea actually talks about its relationship, and then it's cross-checked with other databases, obviously. So you've got the rhetorical ones: indifference, greeting, congratulation, condolences, hope for relations and societies. This is part of North Korea's foreign policy. And then you have what I call actuated, sometimes I even say consummated, in a way. This is the real stuff, the stuff that happens physically. When you end up having delegation, protocol and agreements, memorandum of understanding, defense agreement, and then diplomatic and historical ties. What is very important about those relationships, the actuated one, is if North Korea goes abroad, there's a lot of control that needs to be done. If North Korea receives people, at the same time, there's a lot of control. So those matter because it's not an easy thing for North Korea to do, to actually send delegation or receive delegation. So those are actually quite important. This is how this breaks down. So you have quite a lot of virtual relationship, really, the type of sphere that North Korea doesn't really deal with. And then on the other side, you've got some things that are quite interesting. The defense agreement we can know about, but you have some delegation and some movement. So out of this, what I basically decided to look at to present here today actually are two relationships that are perhaps unknown or perhaps known a little bit. So one is the relationship with Uganda, and the other one is the relationship with Senegal. Those are different types of relationships. So what you have in terms of North Korea diplomacy and development, in the 1950s, you've got a country, it's a young communist country, that is in need of political support and in need of economic support. And both Koreas are going to actually compete for markets, actually, almost abroad. They are going to come to try to get recognition, engagement in other parts of Asia, in other parts of Africa. North Korea is going to receive some help, obviously, from Eastern Europe and other blocs, and he's going to see itself perhaps as a little bit of a leader of the decolonized world in the 1950s and 60s. So it's going to support a number of actors in Africa and a number of movements. So it's supported, for example, Egypt in this first crisis, supported the Algerian National Liberation Movement. So there are also other things going on here in terms of the relationship. Perhaps you're aware of what's going on in the Czech Republic with guest workers, Muslim workers working on car seats, car industry. There's Orascom, I've talked about it a little bit yesterday. A number of other countries having interesting relationship with North Korea. What on earth would Ahmadinejad do when he talks to North Korea? And then there are the others. Publicized, very publicized because it's sexy in the media, really. Whether it has a lot of weight, we're not quite sure. And then the Korea Friendship Association that are also quite interesting because they sometimes portray information as if they are the North Korean government and actually they are not. So the websites are a bit misleading. This is a little bit of a summary. So, is it fabulous? Is it wonderful? Are things really happening? So, North Korea and Africa, okay. The first relationship that's quite interesting is the relationship with Uganda, which actually is a long relationship. This started really in the 1960s and the 1970s. It's a relationship that was officialized via, diplomatic relationship, official diplomatic relationship. And then it's a relationship really what I call of political independence and economic assistance. It's kind of like a mutually beneficial relationship. Basically what North Korea has done is it has sponsored part of the agricultural machines and sector in Uganda, has received cotton and other types of goods in exchange, but has also provided military training and some sort of weapon to Uganda for a number of years actually. What's quite interesting is the relationship has lasted despite changes within the Uganda regime. I mean, when you have one coup after the other, you could argue that the people in place have the same aim. So that is something that has always been advertised. It's very, very clear in the archive. It's not something that's hidden. The problem is that it's now illegal, because of sanctions, of UN sanctions. When North Korea, shot a tested weapon in 2006 and 2009, it got sanctioned by the UN. And now the UN has been looking into this relationship, has been asking Uganda the nature of its relationship with North Korea. Uganda is saying, well, we're very sorry, this is our sovereignty, this is what we want, this is what we do. So this is something that is now labeled illegal by the international community. I think it's quite interesting. The other case is what's going on in other parts of Africa where we've heard about those statutes, but it's basically how North Korea has been raising money through the Monetary Overseas Project. So you've got a number of, actually quite a lot of statues and monuments that have been built all through Africa by North Korea. This is the African Renaissance Monument in Dakar. It's very big, this is, those are the stairs, that's a car, so it's really, really kind of, you can't miss it, basically. This is a very different type of relationship. It doesn't imply a political relationship, it's a business transaction, really. There are others all through Africa, and actually this is part of a research project that I'll be doing also next year, going to Africa and going back to North Korea to compare actually this style. It's very interesting. If you have the State House in Namibia, you have a number of statues, for those of you who have been in Pyongyang, they look very, very similar to what you will find over there. Is it just architecture or what is the relationship? You have a number of North Korean workers working with African countries to develop those monuments. Is there, more behind this? There's quite a lot of money. When you have a look at this, this is what we have, this is what we know. There are more that are being developed as well. But if you add everything, we end up with $700 million that have been paid to North Korea for that. And this is, for a country that's heavily sanctioned and not, is trying to find ways to raise hard currency. This is basically how it's happening. It's controversial. When it comes to that particular African Renaissance monument in Senegal, North Korea was paid in land, actually. It has received some land around the airport and then traded it, and basically sold it to, I think it was a trade union or some sort of union back in Senegal. There are also other types of controversies I'm not going to really get into too much, but do they really represent Africa? People have been complaining, saying that those are not really, for aesthetically speaking, things that are really, really good for Africa. But there's a market, and the market is in those countries that are reaching the 50th anniversary of decolonization, that are looking for monuments, and North Korea is known to actually do it cheaper than European firm. And that is very clear, it's very, very clearly talked about by African leaders who justify the choice of going with North Korea. So, really, does this mean that North Korea is starting to be some sort of a global actor in international trade? I didn't go into this whole debate about globalization. There are obviously a lot of definitions, but I thought that it would be useful to go a step further and to actually see whether North Korea talks about this. talks about investment, talks about globalization and capitalism, perhaps. This is another side of it. This is the Pyongyang Marathon in April. I was there. I ran. I was interested to see how North Korea would cope with 600 to 700 foreigners coming in for a very, very short amount of time. This is quite an interesting organization. So that was quite interesting. It's also a money-making venture for North Korea to receive foreigners who are quite willing to spend money, and so there is a little bit of tourism, obviously, that's developing. But basically, when you have a look at rhetoric on international matters, so going back to very large coding sets and trying to look for evidence, globalization is very much discussed by North Korea, always in a negative fashion. Nothing really surprising here. It's imposed by the West. But you have quite a lot of statements that start to talk about, that keep on talking about the non-aligned movement, G77, basically calling for fairness and equity in trade as well as independence, which is really what we have with the Uganda and the Senegal relation. Those are relationships that don't entangle countries with one another and that allow for some comfort, I guess, to be found. What is quite interesting, though, is how North Korea has changed its focus when it comes to foreign investment. So in the paper, I've got a number of tables that kind of show some evolution, but I just thought I would just focus on a couple of things here. In 1998, North Korea is basically saying that attracting foreign capital is going to ruin South Korean economy. So that's in 1998. But if you look at what they are saying a little bit later, 2010, 2011, that's it starts to be we are getting toward the Kim Jong-un time. North Korea is actually encouraging foreigners to invest in the country. The laws are being changed as well, revised to allow for foreign investment. You've got a number of things. Investment-related laws are amended. You've got the creation of a system that would be favorable, perhaps, for foreign investors. So that's I think, an interesting change. When you have a look at international conference and international engagement, you've got a conference held with economists from abroad to develop social economics, and I think we're going to talk about it in the next papers. And also some sort of an NGO, as much as an NGO can be really in North Korea, created to help actually with phone and email listed. So it's kind of like this idea that things are happening. This is quite recent, 2013. So we see some sort of opening. So just a few conclusions. I think the data is available. This is a discussion we had yesterday when it comes to the types of data we are looking at, ways to get information. Obviously, we can't get much inside North Korea. We can get quite a lot by talking to those who have a relationship with North Korea, obviously. So the data is available, but not always exploited. Obviously, the research is still dominated by traditional security issues, a bit different in Europe, where we are able to go a little bit down a different path. The Uganda case is really about something that has been overlooked. And I think there are many relationships like this that have been overlooked from the other work that I'm doing on North Korea's relationship with this third world sort of countries. They are a lot further. And in case of Senegal and North Korea, it's business, basically. So what is quite interesting, and I think this is something that came about last year when some of you were at this conference organized by Hazel Smith in the UK in October, where we sort of talk about some sort of economic recovery in North Korea. And one of the problems is if it's modernizing and if it's doing better, it's going to do better with nuclear weapons program, and that is going to be something that we haven't really thought about because we've been a bit focused on the collapse, really. So I guess I'll just leave it there.